Terrific. Well, welcome everyone. This is our first event for the Toastmaster year, and we're very excited to be sharing with you the contest and judging workshop. This is a series of all of the workshops that are going to give you the best of information that we've worked with and helped to engage with you because of your feedback from the last 12 months. So we've decided and we've worked with this program because of exactly what you have decided and what you have fed back to us. So really it's imperative that you keep sharing your information back with us so that we can work with it and build an incredible program to support all of you. Now, our agenda has already changed in the last few minutes. So I would love to just say that our keynote speaker is caught on the mountain at the moment. He is up in the ski fields and he will join us as soon as possible. But the keynote is Bharat Sangekar. Bharat has been to many contests over the years and he has represented the district at the international level on the world stage. So he'll share with us some wonderful thoughts to do with competing as soon as he can get on board. Our next speaker will be to do with fundamentals, and that will be Karl Hughes. And throughout the evening, there'll be resources shared in the chat window as well to help support you. There's also another sharing platform that we'll be using as well. So lots of called Slido. So lots of opportunities to engage as well. Karl will be speaking about why we have contests and what the contests are all about and how they're supported and how they change from club to area to division to district to quarterfinal to semi-quarterfinal, and then the World Championships. We'll then speak about the contest chair role, go on to the chief judge role, and Kevin will go in depth into the rule book. So there's different information in regard to the rule book changes. And finally, we will pull apart an incredible speech by Annie Martin. Annie Martin has done extremely well across the district in multitude of contests, and she's given the go-ahead for us to dissect her speech and help to work with that. So I'm just wondering if we have Karl on board yet. Has he joined us? He's still getting dressed. He said, I can't turn up naked. And I said, no, don't. So Karl's not here. And we're just seeing if there are any more people that were going to give their speech on board now. So I'll just throw to Kevin for a moment. Kevin, did you want to share anything else? Or Graham, would you like to share anything else in regard to the Slido or any of the other feedback mechanisms we're using today?
I'll reiterate the observation from earlier around contests and getting ready for contests. Clubs absolutely have the choice to run their contest however they wish. Likewise, they have the option to nominate. They don't even have to run a contest if they don't want to. However, as the rules stand at this point in time, area and above will need to be in-person contests until we hear otherwise. The new rule book is available on the TI website. It has been there for a couple of weeks now with the changes, and they've also supplied the change on change. So last year we had this is the rule book, this is the wording that's changed, and we had it highlighted in red, and now we have it highlighted in red and underlined. So it's quite a straightforward format to be able to follow if you're already familiar with the rule book. And if not, it should be a quick highlight to be able to see what it is you can and you can't do. I recently undertook a quiz that was run by the region advisor for Region 12, and he called it the impossible quiz. And there are 14 questions, which I'm going to share with you later, where he re-emphasized the fact that unless you understand the rule book and you've read it and you've understood it and you've reread it, then you will open yourselves up to challenges and questions when it comes to running the contest. So I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that as you consider running contests or being part of those contests, that you read that handbook and you turn around and do the online training, which they've now made available as well. So there are online tutorials that take you through the steps. They explain all of those elements that are associated to being in a contest and some of the preparation. And we also have the District 73 website being updated at the moment with more FAQs and also the contest scripts. So please recognize that at the moment, these contest scripts that are on the shared drive and on our website are last year's scripts. And we're only just now in the process of updating them with any changes that need to be made because of the new rule book. But they will be in exactly the same place so that you'll be able to find them.
And the rule book is available to be downloaded from international website now?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
And if people are keen to try and do that now.
Well, in fact, it's in the
on the
link that I
Google
shared
Drive.
before. So if you hit that link, you will find the most recent rule book and also the highlighted changes as a separate document.
Thank you, Kevin.
And I'm just taking a call from Carla. Won't be a moment.
I'm not quite sure whether or not I can waffle much more while I delay waiting for Karl.
Call yourself a Toastmaster.
Yeah. So impromptu. The timing, strongly recommend people download the timing backgrounds for those that do the online. I'm not quite sure of the legitimacy of the ones that actually have the countdown clocks. So I wouldn't be using the countdown clocks because they give an unfair advantage to the speakers.
Yeah, Paul.
Kevin, this might be a question for Kevin at PQD.
Yep.
Kevin, given that we're going through another bad phase of COVID, another wave, will that alter one way or the other whether we are doing online contests or face-to-face contests, or maybe hybrid?
I believe it will. So China at the moment, for example, is still experiencing intermittent lockdowns. Yeah. And the rule that we were given last year is that we needed a common playing field. So, you know, if someone can't perform online, then we shouldn't. But as Kwan identified earlier, we have an issue now where Toastmasters International is choosing to run their contests in a hybrid manner. So what we have to understand is, what does that mean for us and what we can do.
Okay.
But it's unfortunately a watch this space until we get that direction.
Okay, so this could change in Kevin. This could change even within the next couple of months.
Well, if we have an uncontrolled outbreak, then absolutely. But they're going to have to make. I think the decision is likely to be either moving forward, it's okay to have it in person and it's okay to have it in hybrid, and these are the rules around it, or we have a major issue that forces everyone to be online. But if this hybrid contest works and everyone's happy with how it's worked, then I would suggest that hybrid is likely to be the way forward. But I'm speculating.
Okay, thank you anyway.
Yeah.
Look, I'll keep watching.
No worries at all. I can see we now have addressed Karl. So
thank goodness.
I'm assuming that means it's okay to pass over to Karl, who's going to give us a breakdown on why we have contests.
Fabulous. Thank you, Kevin. Yes, that's all a bit of a shuffle around as I've been moved up. I was planning for 1:15 and then I had the excitement that none of the links were working, but we're okay. We're here now. Now, as Kevin said, I'm going to talk about an overview of contests. The operative word there being overview. I only have 15 minutes and I'm trying to time myself here because there's so much to talk about. but that will be happening in the other sections after me. So although I'll be saying things a little bit about eligibility, that's really in the rule book, and you'll get all that from sections that's coming up. So more detail there. Now I'm going to discuss the fundamentals of contests, and there's nothing more fundamental than asking the question, why? Why do we have contests? And straight away, I'm going to throw it out there. Take off your mute buttons, and particularly for the new people, perhaps not the seasoned people, just shout out, why do we have contests, do you think?
Well, it's in the nature of people to compete and see if they're better than somebody else, but also it's been something that's been around for decades and decades and decades, so it's a continuing aspect of Toastmasters.
Yes, absolutely. It is ingrained in Toastmasters, absolutely. Anything else?
Well, it's an opportunity as well to develop your skills and to learn from others as well in the contest.
Yes, that's Jane, is it? Yes, Jane, spot on there. Well done, yes.
Because they're fun?
Because they're fun? Well, it depends on some. I've had some conversations with some people who haven't placed. They didn't think it was fun. So it's all how you approach contests, which is really where I'm going with this. So if we sum it up, we can say that it's an opportunity to test your skills against other Toastmasters in what you might label a multi-round elimination tournament. That's what it's sometimes called. It's a bit like Australia's Got Talent, only this is more intelligent and you can actually learn something from doing Toastmasters contests. So what's great about doing a contest? And some people like Jane, as just mentioned that, and Greer as well, you get to push yourself to become better in speaking and speech writing. So the delivery and the speech writing as well, because you're competing against other people, other Toastmasters. In a normal club project speech, they're great. You get up in front of your club and you have an evaluator, but you're not benchmarking yourself against other people. And you certainly haven't got judges in the audience either. So what that's helping you is to raise the bar, because you've really got to look at other factors other than just giving the normal performance and content. You've really got to try and shine there. So it helps you to raise your own personal bar and learn from that. The other thing I find interesting as well is facing your fear. I'm sure that for many of us, we join Toastmasters to not only learn to be an effective communicator, but to also gain confidence about being in front of people and speaking, facing that fear, because you're in front of a group of people, all eyes on you, and we think in our heads, they're judging us. Well, in a contest, they actually are. So it's a very safe, supportive way to get in front of perhaps a little bit more pressure than what you would normally. And certainly if you do that and get through it, and as far as I know, no one has ever done a contest and a lion, crocodile, or trapdoor open and eat them or whatever, they've survived. So it builds up your confidence. And ultimately, it's a new experience. For us to gain confidence and effective speaking skills, we want to put ourselves in as many different experiences and situations as possible, and that really broadens our knowledge then. So when not to go into contests, this is an interesting one, and I've had my ear to the ground over many years around people's thoughts here. And what I would say to you, having been a judge, both locally and internationally, and doing that probably about over 100 individual contests now, and also being a district finalist and placing in the district final, so a competitor and as a judge, my thoughts would be, don't go into a contest if you're not prepared to lose. Because sometimes contests don't always go the way that we think that we should. I know I've sat in an audience and thought, I'm not sure if that's the way I would have placed it in that way. So make sure that you're going in for different reasons. So for instance, put your hand up if you joined Toastmasters in your club to win trophies. Put your hand up if you did that. You saw it on the website, you saw it in the paper, somebody told you about, and you thought, yes, I'm joining that club to win a trophy. Yeah, well, I'm going to put my hand down as well. Paul, you joined the club only to win a trophy. I'm sure you didn't. And I've put my hand down because I didn't either. I found out about contests after being in Toastmasters, joining my club. So as they say in Star Wars, don't get tempted by the dark side, Luke. And I'll do my Darth Vader impression there. Because if you do, you will focus on the loss and you'll not focus on the learning. It's how you frame contests. So don't chase trophies. Do it for the learning and broadening your experience, and you'll get so much more out of it. So what are the contests that we do, particularly here in District 73? Now, everybody should know this. There's 4 categories. Unmute and yell out again what those 4 contests are.
Humorous, table topics, international, and evaluation.
Yes, absolutely. And Noah Sharp has been in every single one of that and has been a district finalist and winner in the humorous one. Absolutely. So those are the 4.
Excuse me. And table topics. Thank you. Before your time, Carl.
That's before my time. So you'll have to raise that up if it's before my time. So absolutely. So those 4 categories, table topics, we all know about that, doing that 1 to 2 minute response to a secret and heavily guarded question or statement that we don't know and we have to respond spontaneously to. A humorous speech contest, funny stories. An evaluation contest where there's a test speaker that we don't know about and we have to do a very quick evaluation. There's not a lot of time to write down those notes and prepare it before we come and deliver that evaluation. Then we also have the international contest, which is often an inspirational or aspirational type of speech, and often a lot of personal stories come out there. There's also something called Tall Tales contest that we don't do in the district, and I don't know if we ever have going back, but certainly since I've been involved with this District 73, we haven't done this. Some clubs run it sometimes for fun, but it's not part of the official district contests that we run. And Tall Tales is very exaggerated, a story that's very, very exaggerated in some way. So those are the 4 contests. Now, it works on a hierarchy as you move through each of those contests, through levels. So you start at club, the basic club level. Then the winners, and he'll explain all the winners. It's quite involved how you go through that in the rule book. I haven't got time to go into this here, but the winners then go on to the area, which is competing against other people within their area from the clubs in their area. Then the winners from that will then go on to the division level, and that's competing against other people from other divisions that also have areas and clubs. So you can see it starts to get harder because those people are going through higher levels. It's a bit like a pyramid, and the expertise of those people, if you like, the quality of them starts to increase because it gets really hard. And then from division, you go into the district final. Now, the district final is attached to the district conference that we have here each year in May. And the finals for table topics, evaluation, and humorous happen there. That's where you get the championship for the district, and fabulous, well done. It's also the district final for the international speech, but the international is a bit different because with the international, that is part of what they call the World Championship of Public Speaking stream. So when you get through to the international and you win there, you actually go further. The other 3 categories don't. You go further to the regionals, which is done via video. We film that at the district final and the international winner then goes through. And they're the quarterfinals of the World Championship of Public Speaking, the regional ones, which is all the districts within our region. The winner of that, or the winners to go through from there, go into the semi-finals at the international convention. Now, that has been face-to-face. We've had a couple of online ones because of the pandemic, but usually, and this year again, they're looking at a hybrid situation, but they are starting to bring face-to-face back in, and that happens in August of each year. Now, the semi-finals happens there. It's quite prestigious. Well, it's very prestigious. It's done internationally at the places, at least from Australia. So, for instance, in the past, it's been in Las Vegas, it's been in Denver, it's going to be in Nashville this year. I know they were looking at Paris, and perhaps and then pandemic came along, so they'll probably do Paris again in the future. And there's been lots of other places that I can't remember them all because, again, I wasn't in Toastmasters. But it's really good getting into that level and even watching the quality of speeches. Now, if you do really well at the semi-finals, then you go in, usually the next day, into the final. This is it. This is the big one. And there's usually, I think it's about 8 contestants then from around the world that you're competing against. And Bharat, I think, who will be joining us soon, if he's not already here, has competed in that final. So you'll hear some great stuff coming from him. And then the winner, well, they become the international world champion of public speaking for that year, which is a prestigious thing to win. So who can compete in these contests? Well, for 3 of them, the humorous, table topics, and evaluation, everybody, to a certain extent, but everybody can compete in them. However, there are some requirements. And the first is that you must be a paid member of a club. If you're not a paid member, you can't be in a speech contest for Toastmasters because you're not a Toastmaster. But also the club needs to be in good standing as well. It has 8 paid members, at least 3 of whom were members during the previous renewal period, and you've got all that into Toastmasters International as required. Again, that'll be in the rule book explaining that. The international contest is a bit different regarding eligibility. For you to enter that, you need to have completed levels 1 or 2 of any path in Pathways. But you've got to have completed 1 and 2, or 6 speech projects in the Competent Communicator Manual, which is the education system prior to Pathways. So that's for people who have been around for a little while, haven't progressed in Pathways, they can rely on that. If you're fairly new and Pathways has already been released into the district, then it must be off that Pathways requirement. You can't then be doing, like now, a Competent Communication Manual. You can also compete if you're a district officer. So people like myself, being an international and immediate past district director, we have Kevin here as well, being the program quality director. We are not allowed to compete because we are district leaders. But aside from that, I encourage everybody to compete because it's a great learning experience. Get in there. It doesn't matter even if you don't place or you think you've come last, as long as you're getting learning. That's more important than the trophy, particularly for new people. And the more you learn, the better you'll get. And then maybe you will get trophies further down the track. But you may get a trophy first time. We don't know. Now, what are the roles in the contest? Well, we have a speaker. That's the contestants. And we've already looked at the benefits of that. But there's other roles as well you can take. For instance, a judge or a chief judge who looks after all the judges. And again, there'll be more explanation of this in other sections later tonight. Now, I've done both. I've been the competitor through the district final, and I've been the judge, as I said, from local through to international. I've done well over 100 individual ones. And personally, I have learned more from being a judge than a competitor. And I believe accelerated my learning and my speaking experience and knowledge. However, we're all different. Some people find the competitor role actually accelerates them. So give them both a try. There are some eligibility requirements to being a judge, particularly when you get to area, division, and district level. That will be explained later and also in the rule book. There's also other contest officials, such as the contest chair that hosts the contest. They often also help organize the contest. The usher to bring contestants out for the table topics, for instance, so people can't hear what the other contestant is responding to or what the question or statement is. There's the ballot counters counting up the judges and collecting the ballots, and also the timer. And there's also opportunities to be a test speaker for other clubs and other areas for that evaluation contest. Ask and put your hand up. I'm happy to be a test speaker for someone. Contest officials are so important. Nobody wins a trophy. No one comes first. No one moves up to higher levels. No one becomes a world champion of public speaking without the people that support and do the hard work to put the contest together. Now, where do you find out about contests? Because I'm running out of time here. First thing is the rule book. There's a new one each year. That has the rules. It has handy checklists and also points you to other resources. That will be talked about later tonight. For me, the easiest way, I just use Google. I put in Google Toastmasters speech contest rulebook. It will take you right there. There's the Toastmasters contest webpage. This has the rulebook on it you can download. It also has great FAQs, frequently asked questions. There's tutorials there for you to look at. And also there's more information about the World Championship of Public Speaking. And again, you can just put into Google Toastmasters speech contests, and it will actually take you there very quickly. And of course, don't forget to talk to people, particularly new people who are trying this for the first time. Talk to people who have competed before. They'll give you some great insights about competition, and not just the people who are competing, but also the judges. Find out what the experience and ins and outs of being a judge are. Once again, I encourage everybody here, particularly if there's new people, to compete to get that new learning experience. Get involved and support contests by being a judge or taking on another role, a simple role, and then work your way up. So whether you're participating as a contestant or whether you're helping out as a support role, or if you're just watching, the big takeaway here with contests is always to be learning. That's why you came to Toastmasters, and that's what contests will do for you. Back to you, Kevin.
And Kevin's changed to Sue, so thank you.
Oh.
Thank you very much, Karl. I really appreciate you coming on board and certainly being dressed for the occasion. Well done. Our next section is vitally important, and that includes the contest chair and the chief judge role. Now, Christine Dimitros will be talking about the contest chair. Christine is a DTM, a past district governor, because before it was a currently it's a director. Now it was a governor before, so she's a past district governor. She has been to a multitude of contests over the years. She has hosted the district contest, and being the district director, she's certainly seen and heard all sorts of things to do with the contest chair role. So I'd love to welcome Christine Dimitros, DTM, past district governor. Welcome.
Thank you, Sue, but I have to make a correction there. I was never a district governor. I've always been a district director when I was a district director. Yeah, I think it changed 2 years before, and I've always been in the role with the new name. I came in as the club growth director, and I was the first club growth director. I'm always proud of that one. Anyway, that's all beside the point. So I am doing the section on contest chair, and I think that the contest chair is one of the best roles in the contest, other than a contestant, of course, to develop your public speaking skills, because you have to get out there in front of everybody and present. And it's been likened to the role of a Toastmaster in club meetings. However, there is one very big difference. Unlike the Toastmaster in our club meetings, you cannot make any comments during the contest regarding the contestant or the speech when you're introducing them or at the conclusion of their speech, as this would be seen as influencing the judges. And you can always tell a new contest chair, because sometimes they make that mistake and then they have to be pulled up. There are two main resources available for the contest chair, and they are the contest rule book, which outlines the responsibilities of the contest chair, and the other one is the contest script. I believe you should always use a script because you can memorize it, but you need to know all the things that you should be saying in the contest. So it's a good idea to have that script there handy and refer to it when your memory doesn't recall as well as it could. With the rule book, that outlines the responsibility of the contest chair, has sections about the briefing of the contestant, and it states everything in there that the contest chair needs to do. However, you need to liaise with the contest organiser when you're being a contest chair as to how much responsibility that you are taking on for being the contest chair for that contest. Sometimes the club, the area director, the division director, or the district contest coordinator may take on some of those tasks, such as contacting the contestants before the contest and providing them with the relevant forms. And there's other things that the contest organiser might like to do rather than leaving it to the contest chair. So just have that conversation with the contest organiser, if you're a contest chair, just to make sure that you're not doubling up on what needs to be done. So Kevin Broughton will be giving a session on the contest rule book later, and he will advise where you can locate this booklet. I tried to locate the current one on the international website. I just couldn't find it this time. So I'm sure Kevin will let you know how you can locate that contest rule book. It is one of your important resources. The contest scripts can be found on the district website, and I will put it in the chat where you can locate that. But they're under club officers, speech contest, how to run a club contest, the organiser, and then it's in District 73 contest resources, and it has all the contest scripts, one for each one that Nola just advised us what contests there are. All right. So those scripts on the website, they actually give you the briefing that you need to give to the contestants and the ushers, if there's an usher, and also the contestants, of course, and then also the contest script itself. And as I say, just you can have it there as a resource, but follow the idea of the contest script. So we do have ushers, and they're only used in table topics and evaluations. So there's usually two. One stays in the room with the contestants when they've been at the start of the contest in the table topics and the well, in the evaluations, you would have heard the speech, the test speech, and then the ushers will be taking the contestants into the other room. So you need two ushers, one to stay in the room and one to bring out the contestants when it's their turn to speak. And they're briefed by the contest chair. With regards to the evaluation contest, you do need a guest speaker, and generally that's meant to be sourced by the contest chair, but again, the contest organiser might do that, take on that responsibility, because they want to make sure that they get the correct speaker, or they want to have a say in what speaker that they have in their event. their contest. There's also the table topics question. Some contest chairs may decide to have 2 questions and get the audience to select the envelope with the question to use. But it's always good to have 2 in case something goes wrong. And I have seen contests where the question has been displayed, and that's probably generally online, but there's something that can go wrong, and then you might need another question. So it's always good to have 2. And that's another thing that the contest organizer might decide that they want to do. So again, you need to liaise with the contest coordinator on what your role is as contest chair. The speaking order is very important. Each contest needs a speaking order, and that's drawn in the contestant briefing. I suggest to have some sort of implements like playing cards or something fun that you can come up with that you can select the order to speak. And once you've got that order, it is a great idea to pass this on to the timers and the chief judge for the judges during the briefing, so that they don't need to be advised of that, and they can painstakingly write it down during the contest. You can just, when you get to that part in the contest brief, the audience briefing, you can just go through it very, very speedily, and it's not as difficult as it can be. So that's my suggestion there. In the contestant briefing, eligibility is a major thing that needs to be established. And each contestant has to be a Toastmaster in good standing, in a club in good standing, and it's a good idea at the club level, they should know. So you don't need to worry about that as contest chair, but it needs to be established, and this is something that can be liaised with the contest organizer. The contestants need to be briefed on, and this is all in the briefing script, so this is just like a little reminder, not to cite anyone's name whilst they're competing in the contest or make a reference to their speech. Now, this can only happen in the international and the humorous speech contests, and it can only happen to the ones going last and coming forward, because the first speaker doesn't get to hear any of the other speeches, so they don't have that ability to mention the names or reference any other speeches because they haven't heard any. But it still makes them aware of that situation, and that's in part of the briefing to the contestants. What's the other one? And of course, the 25% of their speech needs to be original, and just make sure that they understand that. And if they are referencing another thing that's not original, they need to cite that name. Yes, so they need to be aware of all those sort of things. Now, in the contest, when you're introducing the contestants, you need to have the same introduction for each contestant. So get that ingrained into when you're going to say it, or have it written on your the script. And the usual way is, please welcome Christine Dimitros with her speech, Contest Chair Responsibilities. Contest Chair Responsibilities, Christine Dimitros. So I think there's a lot to being a contest chair, but you do get to develop your speaking skills, just like the contestants. And it's the only role other than the contestants where you get to do that. All the other roles are done behind the scenes, and they're not done in front of the audience. So I recommend taking on the contest chair role for that reason. And I'm yet to do a district final, but I have done every other level before that. And I think I'm just dobbing myself in for next year. But, you know, I think it's a good, you know, a good opportunity, and I would welcome it if I was offered that. And I suggest that you guys do as well. So have fun while you're a contest chair. Put your spin on the contest. Whilst following the rules, you can make it your own. I've seen contest chairs dress up for the role. I've seen nurses in the humorous contest. I've seen a pumpkin. So have fun with it. But like the international one is the most prestigious, so I wouldn't make fun of that role so much. But the humorous one you can, yes. And I think, yeah, have fun with it. How am I going for time? Because I can't see a timer. Because I feel like I've hit my 15 minutes.
You're on green. Yep.
Okay. Well, over to the is that Sue? Over to Sue as the Toastmaster, I imagine.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much, Christine, for sharing that information. Nola, you had a question.
Yes, I have a question about the costings. In the rule book, it states that the contest chair has to work out the budget. Now, the budget is a bit of a problem that I can see. If you've got a club who has offered their rooms and their facilities, and then it's taken that they will supply supper. So if you've got a really large clubs that are going to have a large following, you cannot provide food for a large number of people without a cost. And I think that that needs to be debated. And I know that clubs are able to do that autonomously, but I've seen it happen where there are no accounts put in for lunches and afternoon teas and morning teas. And I think it needs to be clarified just a little bit more, other than, as the rule book states, the contest chair is to work out the budget.
Yeah, that's something I would say is delegated to the contest organizer. But are you talking about at the area level and
Of
above?
course. Yes, of course.
Yes, because I was thinking if you're talking about club level, well, no, the club
No,
would
no,
have
it
to
doesn't
look
apply
after
to
it. Yeah, you are. So the district would be allocating a budget for that. But I can't speak out of turn because I'm not on the leadership team this year.
Okay.
And I'm not the finance manager this year, but I believe that there will be a budget for contests this year.
There has to be a budget, and it's in process. We haven't been told yet what amount of the dues revenue that the district will receive. As soon as we know what that is, then we can plug the numbers into the budget model, which the finance manager is in control of, and then we'll make sure that everybody knows what that allocation is.
And the trophies are to be bought by whom? For area and division? Is that the club that is running the project, or is it district that buys those trophies and gets them to the contest chair? How does that work?
I believe it's the district responsibility to get the trophies.
Okay, thank you.
I second that, and that's what's been the past. So I understand that would happen.
Yes, I know, but things change as long as
they do.
There's been an interesting devolution of who manages the trophies that we're just having a few challenges with at the moment, but it'll all be sorted out ready by area contests.
Lovely, thank you.
All right, so thank you everyone. Thank you, Christine, and that's really insightful. I really appreciate all your thoughts in regard to the contest chair role. So before we go on to the chief judge role, we have our special guest that has arrived from the mountains. So I wondered if we can have Bharat turn on his camera. Yes, so we can see Bharat. and he is up in the mountains skiing, and he's come to join us this evening and certainly support us and give us the inspiration that brought him here to today and that brought him also to competing. Welcome, Bharat.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, everyone. Do you want me to just take over, Sue? Hey, everyone. Hello, District 73 family, fellow sponsors. Everyone knows me here, I suppose, except there are a few names that I saw. I'm under a spotlight on the street with my car, with a 4-year-old completely knocked out after a day of skiing. But if it's not audible, let me know and I'll go back inside the car. Just interrupt me anytime. I don't have a speech tonight. I don't have a speech. I'm here because apparently Sue could not find anyone else at short notice. I thought, oh, I'll do it. I'm only here to share my journey, to talk about the contest. I think this is also about contest as much as about judges, and some of you might be competing. International Speech Contest has been a favorite contest of mine. And I wouldn't be a speaker if I did not use some analogy, which I was just thinking of while I was driving down the mountain. And that is about skiing. It's no different. The contest journey for me has been no different to try every year, come up to the mountains. I'm no good skier. I'm an intermediate level skier at best. But it's really always 3 things that I'm going to, you've got to use the rule of 3. It's always about the 3 things, really, that every time I come to the mountain and I see myself every time competing. It's number 1, it's about being on the edge. It's about every single time putting yourself out there, the whole thrill of it, the whole keeping your skills sharp. You don't take your club speeches, your manual speeches, your pathway speeches as seriously when you're presenting to a small audience as you would do when you're competing against other speakers, when you are always thinking about new content that you're going to bring to the table. It's been very similar. Every single time I've competed, I've tried to come up with the new content. You are in for a ride where, you win some, you lose some at different levels, but you have to put yourself out there. Number two has been probably the reason why everyone likes to compete in the International Speech Contest. And that is to see how far can you grow? How much can you grow? In that 6 months time, 7 months time that you started the club contest with and goes all the way to the World Championship in a very special venue every single time. Getting to the district stage itself is quite an achievement because there are always new speakers. It's always a new arena. And it's a phenomenal thing to test yourself on how far can you grow? What are you going to grow into? Skiing for me is something you get on a different mountain every time and try and do a different mountain. Bullers probably like in the 3rd time because it's closer to home. But you get to a certain height and you're coming down, and it's not about how high you go as opposed to how long can you ski. What's your stamina? How much perseverance you have. Will your legs give up as you get older? Will your back give up? And with the contest one, it also becomes a very interesting thing about you are really only competing with yourself because you don't know what speech the other person is going to come up with. You're not looking on the mountain. You're not looking at other skiers, other snowboarders. You're not looking at their tricks. And now I'll have to be interrupted because my kid just woke up, so I'll get inside the car and put on my light. Bear with me. So that's the number 2 thing, is about how far can you go? For me, it's been able to go to the stage and compete with other speakers from all over the world, because that starts to test your skills about how universal your stories are, how universal your messages are. Does your humor really stick if the audience changes? And those things help a lot with your growth. Those things help year on year with becoming a natural speaker, which brings to my 3rd and most important point, which a lot of you would have heard me speaking about in various forums. And that is about this whole contest journey in international speech contests is really about just finding out what kind of a speaker are you. I remember the first time when I competed, I was very new to Toastmasters, and I was competing against very accomplished speakers, right from club all the way to district. And those speakers had amazing different skills. Someone was really good at evoking emotion. Someone was really good at entertainment. Someone was really good at storytelling. And I had nothing other than creativity, other than using my child's storybook and making that as my key prop about talking about what's my story, what's your life story. And that's really what it was. It was about me just talking about my whole life, but using creativity to test out what kind of a speaker am I. Turns out the very second year, my creativity did not take me very far. You can only go as far with creativity, and then you start using the basics that you learn in public speaking about body language and vocal variety and storytelling. And that became the second time when I won. It became more about, am I a good storyteller? Can I tell a story about me and my kid trying to jump in a cenote, in a sinkhole? And is that a story which is motivational enough to take to a message? And that became a interesting revelation in finding out I am a storyteller. I can tell stories, and I've got to refine that skill. And the third time when I competed and when I got a little bit further, it became a challenge, a personal challenge to find out, can I be a speaker who can speak on a social cause? Can I speak about organ donation? Is that a thing? Is that a thing that people will actually unite on the idea of organ donation? Can I really make it universal? What is the universal message coming out of it? And that took me quite far. Surprisingly, that took me quite far. You realize that social causes that people generally stay away from in Toastmasters about, don't talk about politics, don't talk about something which divides people, don't talk about sex and religion. But can you really bring a topic which is not very universally spoken, and can you still make some universal message out of it? So it's very similar to when I go skiing and I realize I'm not a guy who does a lot of tricks. I'm not going to jump over some ledge. I'm not going to try and throw myself over a cliff. So what is it? What kind of a skier am I? I turned out to be the skier who likes to just go on different mountains, and I like to take the sights in, and I just like to see how far can I go. And that's really the journey I find myself every time jumping into the contest journey, which hopefully will not be any different this year. It's trying to find out how far can I go, what kind of a speaker am I, and I'm hoping that's what everyone's trying to also achieve in their own contest journey when you compete with other people. So my question to everyone here would be, how far will you go? What do you want to grow into? And use the contest to that advantage, while also letting that opportunity be something to say something really meaningful to the world, to our fellow Toastmasters, and to be something to come out of it with and be very proud about. And with that, I'm going to just stop there and tell you something which Sue wanted me to speak about. Is being on the world stage is quite an interesting personal journey, because once you get to the world semifinals or the finals or the regionals, you are at a stage where you are looking at some different dimensions of public speaking. You have lights in your face. You're not making an eye contact. We're not speaking to a room full of people. You're talking to a very large room of people, where you still have to try and connect purely with your content, how compelling your content is. And doing that ABC of public speaking, which I learned in my 2019 World Championship speech, which was about authenticity, brevity, and clarity. Can you just be an authentic yourself? Can you say what you want to say in very little words? And can you be super clear on that one thing you want to say? So I would highly encourage everyone to take on a journey, keeping in mind that you're going to be at a spot somewhere along this journey where you'll find yourself discovering what is that authentic thing about you, which becomes appealing to yourself and to other people. And I will want to leave some time for questions, hopefully a couple of minutes. I've left, I can't see the time on my mobile phone thing,
You're
So
on.
a couple of questions from you.
Yep, you're on yellow.
Oh, perfect. There we go. Perfect timing to stop without even timing myself. Yay. So anyone has any questions? We have a minute, I suppose.
Who do you think has given the best speech at the World Championship? What speaker do you like to look at again and learn something each time?
Very, very good question, Nola. I think it would have to be the speakers in the late 90s and early 2000s who I really looked up to, who I learned a lot about. One of them was Mark 1995 speech. He spoke about prejudice, and it was also a speech about a social cause. Forgot Mark's last name now. That was a really good speech. The second was Lance Miller. Lance Miller was one of my favorite speeches.
Mark Brown?
Mark Brown. Mark Brown's 1995 speech was one of my favorites. Just because it was a social cause and how he managed to make it very entertaining and still drive home the point. Lance Miller's speech about validation was a phenomenal speech, which I thought no props, no gimmicks. He was on stage talking about how we go about in our life finding the wrong things in people, but what if we just found the good things in people? Was a phenomenal concept for me. Then there was our own man from New Zealand, Brett, in 1999, I think, who had a very, very simple speech about it's about inspiration, I suppose. He had some phrase from Einstein or someone, can't remember. But Craig Valentine would have to be the most compelling speech I think I've heard when I was studying contest speeches at the time. Craig Valentine had a speech purely about keeping silent for 5 minutes. What does be connecting to yourself by 5 minutes of silence every day would mean? But the way he drove home the point with possibly 1,200 words, a lot of words, but that again suits a very African-American style of speaking. Those by far would have been my favorite speakers. So late 90s, early 2000s.
Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you so much, Bharat. Thank you for joining us from the mountain. Really appreciate your time tonight. And it's wonderful to hear from such a world champion that you are, delivering this to us from the mountains. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say one last thing is I saw on the run sheet just before I joined that Nick is doing some evaluation of a live speech today. Please don't miss it. I don't know whether Nick's still on the call or he's joining later, but he did evaluation of my world championship speech last year on such a workshop. And that's the best evaluation I've seen of the contest speeches. So please don't miss that one. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Generous as always.
Thanks, Bharat. And Nick is joining us and he's on board now, already sitting in the wings, waiting to have his session. So it's my turn now. It's my turn in regard to the
let the sweet mineral melt in your mouth to rebuild your gums and teeth while you sleep. And
so someone's got something playing in the background, which is very interesting, and probably one of the contest speeches. So have a look in the chat box. The world champions are being listed there by Kevin, and he's certainly giving us some insight into hearing what world champions actually sound like. So we're moving on now to the role of Chief Judge. So I'd like to share my screen and just say that we'll be delving into this international speech ballot at the end of my quick spiel, and just wanting you to download the ballot. Kevin, if you could please put that in the chat box so that you're well aware of how we go about judging the international speech contest as well. Okay, we'll just go through that in a minute. So let me find my PowerPoint.
Sue, it's quite hard to hear you.
Dropped again. Have to invest. Is that better?
Yes, that's fine.
Terrific. All right, have to invest in a super mic. Okay, so just to share a little bit of information about the Chief Judge role. So it involves a certain amount of people. The chief judge involves the timekeeper, the tally counter, and the tiebreaker judge. And it also handles the protests because you're the first point of call for any protests that come through. There are two types of judges. You've got the regular judge, which is you have a certain amount of judges depending on the contest, and you have a tiebreaker judge. The tiebreaker judge judges every single contestant like the original judge does, but the tiebreaker has to mark not 1 to 3 placings of first, second, and third on their ballot, but they have to place everyone who's entered the contest. So if you're at a club contest and you have 10 competitors, that tiebreaker has to take the time to put in order at the end their order of all contestants so that it's handed to the chief judge. So you've got the timers and the ballot counters as well. So please note there are different requirements. So you keep going back to the rule book because the rule book is the key to everything. All right, so timers, you need 2 per contest. The timing ballot is a separate recording sheet. You need to give a briefing for every contest. So the timing is different for every contest. So if you are doing a timing for a table topics contest, you don't want someone timing for an incorrect time because the speaker will finish and or won't have enough time. And it's vitally important that the timers who have control of what's going on are doing the right thing. So there are also no visual time, only the light. So you don't have something on the screen counting the time away. That's not legal in a contest. So that shouldn't be happening. And I know it's happened in the past. So please just download the Zoom backgrounds, and there are also stoplight timing lights as well. So if you also intend to compete in the same contest, do not offer to time or be sergeant at arms or any of the other roles, other support roles, because you won't be able to enter the contest. And even if you're saying at club level you're helping out, you can't do it. So even if short on help, you have to tweak the amount of judges, but you can't tweak by you saying, I'll do the judging role and I'll be the timer and I'll be the tally counter or whatever denomination you want to put together. You can't do that. So the lights need to be clearly visible to the speakers and not the audience. And that's also written in the rule book. So the ballot counters, they collect the results from the judges in an envelope. Now, this has been in the rule book for a long time, and I know we're saving paper, but even if you have one envelope and get the judges to put their ballots into the envelope so that you're opening the envelope when you come to the back of the room, when you come to the other room to judge as a chief judge, that's good to not be touching or affecting the results. It's almost like putting it into a bag. You're keeping it separate. When they're counted as a tally counter, the ballots are counted with the chief judge, but the chief judge just oversees that. They don't count it. They oversee that the ballot counters are doing it and checking it twice. So judges, you need different amount of judges. At club level, you need 5 judges. At area level, you also need 5 judges or equal representation from each of the clubs. And really, you need an uneven amount because otherwise it becomes quite awkward with judging ballots. So at division level and district level, you need 7 judges, and all the other remaining contests as you go higher up the scale, they have 9 judges, but all of them have one tiebreaker. So there's only one tiebreaker that will break the tie whenever it happens. So please read the eligibility form to judge, including the chief judge. They need to read that as well. The tiebreaker doesn't attend the briefings because the tiebreaker is anonymous. Even though the tiebreaker is anonymous, you could actually have all your judges and have your tiebreaker, if they're particularly new to the role, attend the briefing but not identify who the tiebreaker is. I would suggest that if you're trying to educate your club and have more people helping to support each other, but don't say who the tiebreaker is. Even though it does say the tiebreaker does not attend briefings, I would suggest at club level, if you're training, to do so. So the chief judge, there is a checklist on page 25 of the rule book. This checklist, I'm looking at it now, is incredible. The information in the rule book is all there laid out. And it's so simple. It's the one-pager document that you take with you, and it can help you to understand exactly what you're doing with the role and making sure that you've covered off everything in the briefing. A good idea is to collect the speaking order from the contest chair, and that can be someone coming back to the room or sending an email or a text message to you so that you know what the order is, and you can share that with the other judges. When there's an error, or if there's an error, when the announcement comes out of the winner by the contest chair, the ballot counters and timers and chief judge can interrupt immediately. So if you are at a contest and you find there's an issue, please interrupt immediately. And it can be corrected there and then. But once the contest procedure and announcements are over, there is no going back. So once the contest is closed, that's it. There's also that eligibility checker that the contest chair uses, but you can also use that yourself. One of the most important things is the notification of the contest winner must go to the next level. So the area director up, and if no one is in that role, it feeds up the ladder up to the top, which is Kevin Broughton, who's responsible for contests. So he's the program quality director, so it needs to get to him if the next level up isn't available or not in a role for that particular area that the club's in. So please feed it up so that the information can go forward, because that's vital to allow people to continue on. The timing is also done in full seconds, not part of a second. So when you're briefing as a chief judge, you're saying it's 7 minutes 30 is the light goes on at 7 minutes 30, but at 7 minutes 31 is a disqualification, not 7 minutes 30 plus 10.10 of a second or whatever. So it's always the full 1 second. There are also protests, and protests are made by the chief judge and contestants only, and it's limited to eligibility, originality, and reference to another contestant's speech. So just please make sure they're the only things, and the originality and reference to another contestant's speech is involving the judges, and the eligibility is already checked prior to the contest by the contest chair. So when, say there is a protest, if a contestant feels that they need to, that it's incorrect, or they feel that any of the 3 reasons need addressing, they can contact the contest chair, because that's who they're dealing with. The contest chair will then feed it through to the chief judge, and then a meeting will be held. So if you're a judge, you would potentially put a P for protest on your ballot, and that would quietly go back to the chief judge, who would then call a meeting with all the judges, and they would discuss it. And if they felt that it was a potential protest that would knock out the contestant, that would then go back to bringing the contestant out, so it will be discussed. So they have a right of reply. They don't get disqualified and that's it, with nothing, no right to defend themselves. They have a right of reply. And anything where you are discussing something one-on-one with a contestant, please make sure you are visible. No secret black screens or hiding behind anything. If it's online, it needs to be so that the contestant has that chance of connecting and discussing it. So because it becomes like sheep stations, it's very important to that contestant that's made it that far through. So discussion in briefings, as I said, making a P on the ballot is a quiet way of going about it, and the contest chair will certainly have the contact details of you if you are a chief judge. A technical failure. So the chief judge role in that is that a technical failure is of timing lights, and an additional 30 seconds is allowed. Now that's behind the scenes. So the judge will collect the timing ballot from the timers, the chief judge will, and the chief judge will collect the tiebreaker ballot, and they will come and they will discuss it. So that's behind the scenes, as in whether they're adding the 30 seconds on if there was a technical failure. Stopping the clock is only done by the chief judge if online. And this 3 minutes that is bandied around as the wonderful number is not 3 minutes. It's whatever's decided on depending on the issue by the chief judge. So just be aware that it could be longer than 3 minutes, or it could be 10 seconds. But if it's a continual issue, if it's an online technical issue, then that will be decided on by the chief judge. All right, so resources, plenty of them at the end of this, and you'll be shared this PowerPoint. Lots more resources to do with tie breaking, rule book, and frequently asked questions. And remember, if it's not in the rule book, potentially it's an urban myth. All right, so let's go back to the ballot, the contest ballot. Would someone be able to share the ballot on the screen for me? It's the ballot is in the chat box. Thank you, Nick. So the ballot is different in every contest. So the International Speech Contest is important because it's divided into 3 sections. The first section, in a briefing, the first section is the content. The content is worth 50% of the mark. So if you're judging as a judge, you are looking at the speech development, the effectiveness, and the speech value. So it's only 50% of the whole content. So you're looking to judge, you are looking to judge as in you're not looking to evaluate. So all you need to do is go by the score. So if the speech development can only have a maximum of 20 points, you can't change the weighting. So you can't say, oh, well, that development, that structure, that organization was amazing. I'm going to give them 50 points for that. Well, what about the effectiveness or the speech value? They have got 15 marks each. So you cannot change the weighting. So if it was superbly excellent, the most you could give in speech development was 20. If we move down, the delivery is only worth 30 marks in total. So physical, as in appearance, body language, and speaking area, is only 10 marks. So say they look super specky and they're amazing and they've dressed immaculately, the most they can get for that is included in that is the appearance, the body language, and speaking area. So don't change the weighting again. The voice is only 10 points, and the manner is 10 points as well. So that's evenly divided, the delivery, and then we move on to language. On the back of every ballot, there is a guide to what it means with speech development, what it means with delivery and effectiveness. So that is all there laid out for you. And if you download that guide in the chat box, you'll certainly have a better idea of how you go about it. Your judging code of ethics at the bottom is something that's important to look at. If you can scroll right down to the bottom, Nick. Yep, so that you will be objective. So you just need to look at what you're seeing at the time on the day and not go by what you know and what you've seen in the past. So I'd love to hand over now back to me as I close this session, but that's the role of being a chief judge.
Sue, could we move to Tracey's session now? Move mine to the end, because mine is merely a rehash of information that's already in the directory. If people have the time to stay at the end of the session, then I'll still run my session. But if Tracey could go next to get us back on track.
Perfect. So Tracey Korsten. Tracey Korsten is an amazing presenter, and she gave an incredible speech at one of the clubs I belong to recently, and it helps to really help you understand yourself a little bit better. So I'd love to hand over to Tracey Korsten, an incredible speaker from Adelaide Toastmasters Club. Welcome, Tracey.
Thank you, Sue. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Can I share screen? Is that open for me? Yes, it is. How lovely. Oh. So if I were going to tell you to turn the noise down, would I be telling you that you've got Metallica cranked up to 11 or that you're talking too loudly? I might be, but I also might simply be telling you that there is too much inconsistency in your decision making. A noise is a term that's used in comparison to bias, because I think most of us understand the concept of bias, of being biased in decision making. You tend to give jobs to men, or you tend to dislike people who wear berets, or whatever it might be. Whereas noise is something different. And one of the great exponents of this idea around decision making and thinking is Daniel Kahneman. And his great saying is, wherever there is judgment, there is noise, and more of it than we think. And obviously in something like judging competitions, there's going to be a fair bit of noise. But interestingly, I think Toastmasters does a very good job of trying its best to reduce the noise. So what I wanted to do this evening was talk a little bit about noise, about what it is, and some things about human decision making and judgment, which I think are quite fascinating generally, but also, of course, have an impact on the area of competitions and even on evaluations generally. So the difference between noise and bias. And I love this illustration. I think it's really quite clear. So we're looking at a target, and in A, we have an accurate hit. We have 4 people trying to hit the target, and they've all been quite accurate. So they've all made quite accurate decisions. If we look at B, we have what's called noisy decision making. The target's all over the place. Nobody's hit the target. They're all over the shop. In C, we can see that all 4 have hit around the same spot. So there's consistency, but it's not on the target. It's quite biased. And in D, we have noisy and biased. So kind of around the one spot, but also quite spread about. So what we're looking at with decision making, with judging, is hitting the target better, making better judgments. And we'll find out what we mean by better judgments as we go along. And this is one of the big differences, and I love this saying, bias has a kind of explanatory charisma, which noise lacks. We can see bias. We can go, hang on, this is very biased against women, or this is very biased against Indigenous people, or this is very biased against people who didn't go to a private school. Bias is kind of can become quite obvious, and it does have that, as he says, explanatory charisma, whereas noise doesn't. And an example of noise is judges. So judges, let's say judges making decisions on whether somebody's going to get bail. And what you find is that the same kind of crime with the same kind of perpetrator will get a very different bail decision from different judges, or even sometimes from the same judge, depending on whether she's had her breakfast yet, or whether it's just before lunch, or whether she's just had an argument with her assistant, or so on and so forth. So that's noise. It's poor decision making that doesn't have that explanatory charisma that bias does. So the presence of noise means there is something wrong with the decision making or the judgment process. And in the example I gave about judges, and that's actually a real example, we can see that system noise is inconsistency, and that inconsistency damages the credibility of the system. And Toastmasters is a system. And if we have inconsistency in our judgments in competitions, if we see that, you know, people who just happen to be louder seem to get better marks than some other people, and sometimes people get poor marks because they're loud, or whatever it might be, we're all going to lose our faith in Toastmasters, and particularly in the Toastmasters competitions. So consistency of decision making is really vital, not just to the people, the individuals against whom those judgments are being made, but for everybody who's involved in that system. So I'd like you to have a look at this problem and just pop A or B into the chat box. So Linda, and this is a quite famous problem in this area, the Linda problem. Linda is 31 years old. She's single, outspoken, and very bright. She majored in philosophy at university, and as a student, she was deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice. And she also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. So I want you to consider which alternative is more probable. A, that Linda is a bank teller, or B, that Linda is a bank teller and an active feminist. So if you just pop A or B into the chat box, and let's have a quick look and see what people have said. Two answers, three. Few more. Interesting. Yep. B, but it shouldn't be. Interesting answer. Okay. So we've got just briefly, it looks like about a 50-50 split there between Linda being a bank teller and Linda being a bank teller and an active feminist. Can I ask, who will I ask? Can I ask Sam why you thought A was more probable? Sam.
Hi. Yeah, I thought A because well, basically there's an equal chance that that she's an active member of any social justice, any potential social justice groups, and feminists are literally just one of the many groups that she could be an active member. It doesn't even say in the thing that she is an active member of any groups. So realistically, there's a much higher chance that she's not an active feminist than there is that she is an active feminist. It's just looking at it in terms of raw probability, it's more likely that she's not an active feminist.
Okay, yes, interesting, thank you. And someone who gave us a B answer. For some reason, I can't seem to scroll down my chat here properly. Oh, there we are. Who gave us a B? Is it Kwan? B, but it shouldn't be?
Yes, I've actually done this exercise before in one of the courses I've attended, but the reason why I chose B and it shouldn't be is because there are a lot of facts that were given in the question that skews you towards choosing an answer that complements that fact. But in reality, I think this is one of the ways that bias and noise can manifest in our lives. So there you go. I think I've already told the answer. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's certainly part of it. Essentially, what this boils down to is that we're looking at probability. We're not looking at plausibility. So if you know anything about the basic mathematics of probabilities, the minute you add another thing, you've got two things that have to be, they are just mathematically less probable. So it's quite probable that she's a bank teller. It's less probable that she's that. It's nothing to do with the plausibility that this description gives us. So what we're looking at there is the plausibility of something versus the actual probability of something. So it's just something to have a think about, that the minute you go, what's the probability of you buying a loaf of bread and some butter? That probability is less than the probability of you buying just a loaf of bread. So I like that exercise. And it boils down to the fact that we have, and this is another Kahneman quote, a mind that is hungry for causal stories. We also like decision satisfaction. We like that internal signal that we've completed our judgment. Yes, that's the judgment I wanted to make. I'm happy with that. And that's something we need to watch. Reds, is that 10 minutes already? Graham?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, it's 10. Okay, sorry. So we're looking at adult decision making, and these are some of the ways in which adult decision making are measured: our consistency, our resistance to sunk costs, all these things, and resistance to framing. And I think Kwan mentioned something that was really related to framing, that the way something is framed is important. Checklists are boring, but death is worse. We even have checklists for surgeons now. And as Sue pointed out, there are a huge amount of checklists in Toastmasters for judging, and that helps us do away with our poor decision making. I won't talk about software because my 10 minutes has gone much, much quicker than I thought it would. But decision making in competitions, we have weighting, and the weights are given on those sheets, which is great. You know, that helps to give us consistency in our decision making. And we're all affected by these various things: susceptibility to heuristics, which are shortcuts, drive to judgment completion, and so on. And it's really important to be aware of them. So I will finish with this, one of my favorite little cartoons. It's a very good description of me. You look like a bad decision. Come over here. Thank you, Sue. Back to you.
Thank you, Tracey. I love that. I really enjoy looking at the bias and the noise that we have in the background. So well done, and really enjoyed that. Yeah, and we'll now move on to Kevin's section. Kevin.
No, on to Nick. Let's get
on. Okay, Nick. Nick is pulling apart an incredible speech. Nick Kastelein did this last year, and as Bharat highlighted, it was a really valuable exercise. So in the chat box, there will be put the judging ballot again if you want to go through and start to touch on what Nick is doing as well. So back to you, Nick. Nick is a DTM and is a very valuable presenter in the district. So welcome, Nick.
Thank you, Sue. And thank you everyone for all of the silent clapping that I observe on screens. So this exercise that we're going to do is an exercise in judging, and it is about really thinking about the judging criteria and understanding what the different criteria mean. And we do it for a fairly advanced speech. So we're going to do it for a winning speech, because typically the more advanced the speakers are, the harder it is to judge between them. And that's for fairly obvious reasons. You could say it's down to noise, that at a club level competition, you get a lot more variation between speakers than obviously you will once you've gone through several layers of filtration just by having multiple contests, and eventually get to district level where you've got just a handful of very good speakers, and picking between them can be really hard. So I don't want to draw this out too long. Sue, I assume you or someone else has a capability to share the speech when we're ready to step into it.
Yes, we can. Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. So we're going to watch a speech that I believe was at district level. It was a winning speech. And and it's introduced in the video that we watch. Just a couple of ideas for people before you start watching. When you're judging a speech, obviously in the actual competition, you only get one chance to hear it all. You can't hit rewind, fast forward, go back to the beginning. And so if you do a lot of judging, you probably develop some habits to make sure you hear all the parts of the speech, you're paying attention when you want to be. I can just tell you the habit that I have. I have on my pad already pre-written down one side all of the judging criteria, the first main section being content, and then delivery, and finally language. And when the speaker starts talking, I'm watching, and I make myself just watch and not write anything down until at least they've finished their introduction. I just want to get a flavor of the way that they present and a chance to actually listen just like any ordinary audience member would be listening, rather than listening as someone who's, you know, hyper analytical in everything. I also don't want to look away during any of the early critical moments of the speech. So at the beginning, I just sit there and listen. Then I start writing on one side of my pad a summary of the speech structure as I'm hearing it. So I'll go, introduction was an anecdote about this, and then I'll try to listen out through the speech as it goes from one dot point to the next. And if I can write down the structure, if I can put it in my own words on the side, that helps me at the end to think about speech development. How did the speech develop as a whole, which is the main criteria that's worth the most points. Then towards the middle of the speech, I'm willing to look away from the speaker a little bit, do a bit of writing, and I work my way through the checklist of physical and voice in particular, because those things, our tendency is to have a polarized perspective. We go, physical is good or bad, or voice is good or bad. So having a checklist that actually breaks it down into individual points helps you to see things that your initial polarized perspective won't. So we're going to watch that speech now. We'll hit play in just a moment, and that's a bit of a recommendation as to how you might judge the speech while we're going. Take notes, or you can just watch it and enjoy it and try and remember the thoughts you had. And afterwards, we'll go through the judging ballot and see what we think of it. All right, let's hit play. Whoever's got the magical ability to share the video.
Our next contestant is Annie Martin with Speaking Up for Billy. With Speaking Up for Billy, please welcome Annie Martin.
As a schoolgirl, I was a typical goody two pigtails, always the first one to shoot up my hand in class, until I got to grade 5 and I met my new teacher, Mrs. Horrocks. She was as horrible as that name sounded. Now, you have to picture a prune and put a rod up its backside. And then picture that same prune swaggering and swaying its way back into the school grounds after her liquid lunch at the local. Then we knew the classroom would be ruled with a ruler and a disgrace wall. My best friend, Debbie, she had to face her disgrace for a whole hour because she was whispering. Do you want to know why I had to face disgrace? Well, it was maths. I ventured up my hand. Yes, 3 goes into 21 7 times. Contest chair, you know that 3 goes into 21 7 times. You know I was right. But Mrs. Horrocks marched me right up to the disgrace wall to write down 100 times. I must not say goes into in a maths lesson. I must not say goes into in a maths lesson. I must not say. And I never once put up my hand again in school, not even when I was right. She had taken away that schoolgirl voice. I couldn't even speak up for Billy. Billy was new to our school from the Housing Trust estate. He had no uniform, he had no lunch, and he had no idea what was about to happen. Mrs. Horrocks sized up this tiny 10-year-old boy. She seized him by the ear to the disgrace wall. 2 times 3, 2 times 4. You're a waste of my time. And then the sound of a trickle, and Billy had wet his pants. I was horrified. We were all terrified and mortified for Billy. But every one of our voices was frozen in fear. Not one of us could speak up for him. The years rolled on, and those pigtails changed to a perm. Well, it was the 1980s. But my friendship with Debbie did not change. So much so that I let her convince me to go along to our primary school reunion. And we walked in together, shoulder pad to shoulder pad. We were scanning the room. I wonder who we would see. I wonder if Billy would be there. And then we saw her, Mrs. Horrocks, age 105. The stick up her back had been replaced by a stick out the front. She was shrinking. She was still drinking. It's Annie and Debbie. Do you remember us? In Billy's class. Do you remember Billy? She just stared at me blankly and hobbled back to the bar. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know who Billy was. I had given away my voice to a prune at the bar who was soaking in brandy. And then Debbie cut in. Annie, you've still got your voice. I think everyone in this room heard your voice. But how can you use that voice to speak up? How can I use my voice to speak up? Well, I couldn't change what had happened, but maybe I could change what happened next. Do you know what I did the next week? I signed up to become a teacher. And there in a university lecture hall, for the first time in 15 years, I spoke up. And in my first year out of teaching, I was given a class of boys from disadvantaged backgrounds. They had no uniforms. They had no lunch. And I had no time to waste because I knew they were hungry. So I practiced flexing that muscle of speaking up in staff meetings, lobbying the school to start a breakfast club. And it worked. And there every morning, as I watched them eat their wheat bix, in their eyes, I saw Billy. 25 years later, I became a school principal. Every day it was my job to speak up for my students. And in my school, there was no disgrace whether your times tables were wrong or whether your times tables were right. But you know the best part about being a school principal? I got to choose the teachers, and not one of them was a Mrs. Horrocks. Fellow speakers, have you ever had prunes in your past that have just silenced you? Think of that girl silenced by her times tables. But the time came for the tables to turn. There's always time for the tables to turn. You see, those prunes will shrivel and decay away. Just as you flex that muscle to speak up for what is right and when you are right. You can't change what has happened, but you can change what happens next. And it begins with your voice. How can you use your voice to speak up? This one's for you, Billy. Contest chair.
All right. Clapping on everyone's behalf. Sorry, I missed the speaker's name. I've watched it 3 times today and I've forgotten her name. If someone can write that in the chat, that'll be useful. Speaking about the chat, you have 2 options for sharing your thoughts in this workshop. One is to write things in the chat. The other one is to speak out loud. If it's seeming to get too chaotic, then we might put constraints on the second, but otherwise, I think it's not too many people in the group that you could be able to just unmute yourself and say something, remembering what we previously heard about authenticity, clarity, and brevity. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen in order to take some notes that we'll all be able to see. I think that will be a reasonable way to do this. I previously had this fantastic tablet that I could share notes from. It was very useful, and unfortunately it stopped working. So I need to complain to the boss. All right. So we're going to judge it against all of the different judging criteria. First judging criteria, what is it? Missed the opportunity. The first section is content, and the first subsection under that is
delivery.
Yes. Yep. The next. Took me a moment to hear what you said there.
Oh, sorry.
And the final one
is language.
On the ball, Nola. Okay, and the first heading underneath content is speech development, which is worth more points than any of the other individual categories. So speech development is the structure of the story and how it unfolded. What did we think about the speech development in Annie's presentation?
I thought it was brilliant because she set firstly the ground and the foundation of her speech. It was clearly defined, I thought.
Yeah. What would be a high level summary of the structure that she used? How did she approach the development?
Effective.
Chronologically unchallenging. So
I was
Kevin
just
Broughton.
about to say that, Ned.
So Kevin wrote that into the chat. I was just reading out loud. Chronological. So it simply worked through a series of stories from her life, but obviously spanned quite a long time. She started off as a young child and ended up as a principal. And this approach was telling a series of stories. Would we agree? It was most of the speech was telling stories, which she daisy chained together. So some call this technique tell a story, make a point, tell a story, make a point, tell a story, make a point. It's a pretty good way of presenting. Stories are very engaging to everyone.
But her characters were beautifully defined.
Yes, like the way that she developed the characters of the stories. And I think that's a good point under effectiveness. Like, was it effective? Like, first up, we say, what was her objective? Was to tell stories in order to get her point across. Was it effective? It was effective storytelling because of the characterization.
And her body language helped with that, because just by grabbing her hair, I could immediately see pigtails, and the woman with the stick up her rear end, you know, all of those things were very clearly done.
Yeah, so in terms of the physical, which is also coming, but we can jot that down now. We can say that what we observed was coherent with the message. All right, so speech development, it was a series of stories. To put a little bit more flesh on that, the first story was about Mrs. Horrocks disciplining one of her friends, and that resulted in her no longer putting her hand up, her being silenced, her voice being silenced.
It's a horror story.
The Horrocks horror story. The second story was about Billy, and a time when she then, being silent, didn't stand up for someone else named Billy. That flowed into, in a sense, the third story, which was meeting Mrs. Horrocks many years later. And this is when the issue of her voice being silenced was kind of brought to a head. She felt that she had been silenced, and her friend pointed out that she did have a voice, and that led to her becoming a teacher. And so the final story essentially was that she became a school principal. And so 4 stories. Are there any negatives regarding the speech development? Would you have given it the maximum points that it could get, or did you see any ways that it could have been better?
I thought, oh, I'm the only one speaking. Could someone else add something, please? Because we need to get through this, don't we? But I thought the shouting into the microphone that distorted her voice, and when she snapped the ruler, that took away from the power of that movement, because it was too loud and her voice was distorted, I thought.
Yeah. That certainly was the case. With the speech development specifically, so issues of structure, Kevin's pointed out the stories got shorter and shorter. That's fairly common. That could be deliberate. That's kind of a building of pace. I'm not sure I would say that's necessarily a downside, but if you found it to be one, you could mention that. I think it's fair to say they started blurring together a little bit. And one thing that I thought perhaps took away a bit of impact is that this issue of her having a voice was resolved halfway through the speech when her friend said to her, "You do have a voice." And that meant that was kind of a closing of the main arc of the speech, which meant that what happened after that, was it adding to the resolution, or what was it? Where was it going to take us from there? So we had these 3 themes. One was about putting your hand up. One was about having a voice. One was about you're not in control of what has happened, but you're in control of what happens next. That's where she then took it. That was a pretty big change in direction for the speech. And I thought it was almost a change in message. It became about, do you have a voice, or are you in control of what happens next? But I'm not 100% clear on my thinking around all of that. Maybe it's because it's 9 p.m. on a Friday, but I did find that I thought that the early themes in the speech were resolved halfway through, and at the end I was caring about new themes, and I hadn't necessarily joined them all together. So maybe it got a little bit blurred. But so you could think about that, and whether you gave it speech development as excellent, or whether you thought it could have had something a bit more.
I found the switch between Billy having his episode and then moving straight into the next one. It just happened too quickly for me. Her whole manner changed so quickly. I couldn't absorb the impact of what had just happened, because she went into a smile and then went straight into the next phase.
And that was a big jump in time as well to when she was an adult. Yeah, so maybe that's where it broke from the tell a story, make a point, because between those two, she sort of didn't stop and make a point and reconnect with us. All right, interesting thoughts there.
She also added a new name in, and it would have been good to continue with the name of Billy instead of adding a new name in. So you needed the new person to build on the other story as well.
That's a really good point, Sue, that I forgot to jot down, but she said, I was still friends with some person. I'm like, you were friends with her before? I've never heard of this person. So good points. Good points, everyone. So perhaps that was a bit of a loss of continuity that happened in the middle. And we're being picky, so I would still be giving pretty high marks on this, but maybe we're just not giving perfect marks, that's all.
And towards the end of the story, I found that she could have like maybe brought back what she's learned from the nasty behaviors of Mrs. Horrocks and consolidate it during the time as a school principal to just bring all those stories to a close nicely, to wrap them up with a great conclusion to tell the audience how Mrs. Horrocks shaped her to who she is right now. I think that would be a more powerful story for her, for Annie. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the issue of speech value then, that we would be saying when we were drawn to the conclusion, did it have something for us? And so speech value, I think of it in terms of speeches can have all sorts of value. One is to inspire, to motivate, to persuade, to entertain. Usually we're trying to do all of those with an international speech, trying to entertain people, but the main one is usually either inspiring or motivating. I think this was intended to be inspirational, but I also did find at the very end, if I asked myself, what was the key message? Can I say it in one sentence or even one phrase from the speech? I'm not sure that I could. Maybe that issue of, you know, are there prunes in your life? Do you need to prune them? That would have been funny. I don't know. There was something there, but it was a little bit blurred for me.
Okay, for me it was clear, but then I've heard Annie speak very often. But for me, it was enlightenment from a childhood experience to changing perhaps the rest of her life. Because what she doesn't mention is that she was a principal of a very special school that had special needs children. And maybe if she had made that point, which is the reality, her reality, she didn't go for the option where there were high achieving children for the rest of her life. She was a speaker. She was a teacher of children that had problems like Billy.
Nola, the trouble with that, if you take that into account, if she spoke about that, that's fine, but you can't, even though you know that, you can't use that as part of your judging, because that.
No, of course, I realise that. Thank you, Michael. But I'm just saying, maybe if she had mentioned that one incident that happened when she was 6 set for her a path that she has never veered from.
Yeah, but what I suppose my point is, you can't. That's where unconscious bias can impact how you judge.
Yeah. Look, we've got to keep the pace up a little bit more. Right. So I think that in terms of just your judgment on that one, it's a speech value. You're saying, did I get, or actually it's actually effectiveness. Did we actually get the message? Speech value is, you know, that it has one. Effectiveness is, did it come across? And I think that if we were to be finicky, we could say that these different themes of these different phrases that stood out of, I'm not in control of what has happened, but maybe I can control what happens next. And that little girl lost her voice. Oh, you do have a voice. In fact, everyone here can hear you. And then I honestly, I just didn't catch the phrase about prunes. But all of those kind of, to some extent, interfered with one another a little bit, not just working constructively with one another, those three things. That's my feeling, because I wasn't 100% sure which one I ended on. And in the very last few moments, we saw different themes being pulled, including the "this is for you, Billy," and then the hand up. And I'm like, which one of these is your message that you're punching me with? Which one? I was seeing a lot of different ones. So that just, to me, that did sap a little bit of effectiveness. Speech value, we spoke about it being inspirational and entertaining. Let's get on to the delivery. I'm not sure that I did those two justice, but we've got to keep moving. So delivery, firstly, physical. Thanks for the comment there, Kwan. So physical, I have a checklist, as I mentioned earlier, and I've got 5 points of physical. I remember them by working from the eyes outwards. So eyes, face, gestures, posture, and movement. Obviously, posture a difficult one to assess on a recorded video. But I'll give my thoughts. Eye contact, looking directly into the camera, was done very effectively, and that's quite hard. So everyone would have felt that she was looking directly at them. In terms of facial expression, there was a lot of variation of that continuously throughout the speech. I thought it was very effectively used. Gestures, there were some points where there were descriptive gestures. There was continual gesturing in conversational manner, and then some descriptive ones like the stick and the other stick. We also then, in terms of movement, and this is something I really liked, was the use of depth, moving up against the wall and moving right up forwards to talk to us. So that's, not everyone would do that, given the opportunities presented by having a camera. And so to me, that movement one, that pushed up into the wow factor zone, where you might be giving some very high points. The other points were all in the good to excellent. So any other thoughts, things that people spotted in the physical delivery? We've got impactful there, drama, engaging, a lot of body movements, agreed.
I wonder whether the wall could have been expressed by the edge of the camera angle rather than her hand gesture, if she knew her space.
You could. That'd be challenging, sort of.
Yeah. But I think it all worked really well. And there were some times, however, I found her smile overly smiley. It generated a slight incongruence to me in the messaging. But I mean, that's just me. I'm naturally not a smiler.
Well, we'll speak in a moment about manner, which is kind of the overall effect that's created. All right, so continue to put up any comments or thoughts that you had in the chat. The next aspect of delivery is voice. We've already had Nola mention that there was some distortion at the high volume. I don't know if this is pre-recorded and she could have had an opportunity to deal with that, or if she would have had to have a very good knowledge of her equipment to handle that. So on the whole, I actually put it as a plus, that she was clearly using good power and volume. It was just unfortunate on the technology that it maxed out the receivers. So again, I've got 5 points that I use for voice that I write down and check off one by one. For this one, I use 5 Ps. So pitch, power, pace, pause, and personality. And in terms of pitch, there was variation in pitch. If that was on your checklist and you listened to it, you would have heard it. There probably wasn't so much low registers included, but definitely some use of the high registers and variation. Pace, it was generally a fairly fast pace, but she pulled it off because she wasn't tripping over her words.
Yeah.
And there were changes in pace. And with all these things, it's changes that recapture audience's attention. So it's not just, did they have a good pace, but did they change pace? Did they use it in a coherent way? And I think that she did. Pausing, not a whole lot of use of pausing, but when it's videoed and there's no live audience, pauses are much more dead than they are in the real world. So I think she may have actually got a reasonable balance on that. Power, as I mentioned, some use of very loud in the mix, and some much quieter sections as well. And so she demonstrated her skills in that area. And finally, personality. Personality is a catch-all for all the things about voice that you can't put a technical word to. And I think that she did use her voice in to convey a lot of different types of tone. Was there any wow factor that you might have found? There was no unusual exemplary things like singing or doing accents. She did do different voices for Mrs. Horrocks, and so there was a little bit of exemplary uses of voice that maybe would push you into that highest mark category. Any other particular thoughts around voice? not being shared. All right, so we've reached the time limit on this, and this is an activity that you can keep going. Look, the last three matter in, and then in language, it's appropriateness. Well, I can't spell apparently, and correctness. Manner, there was some mention of whether it was maybe too hyperactive, too intense. That is always a difficult balance to get in these competitions, and particularly when there's no real audience there, because you've got to kind of guess how a real audience would react with the way that Toastmasters are running these virtual contests. So I thought on the whole, not too bad, but that question of authenticity, when people are being a bit hyperactive, do they do that at the expense of authenticity? It's very difficult not to. And I think the way to achieve it is have the quieter moments. Step out of the drama and just talk to us, and do it in a very conversational and real way. Don't do it in that hyper prepared way where you've got your alliterations and you've got your voice and your eyebrows and everything happening all at once. So get a quieter pitch and step out of the drama, and that would have been valuable, I think, to have that a little bit more in those points between the stories.
So that would be a recommendation that you would make?
That would be a recommendation I would make, yeah, to improve on the manner side of things. And finally, language appropriateness. I think a lot of people really don't quite know what to say on these ones. And this is where I give marks for things like alliterations and triplets and using interesting words and phrases and the small metaphors and anecdotes and things like that. We did see a bunch of different metaphors and anecdotes, some of them tied together in funny ways. Some of them were probably easy to miss. But I've seen more diversity in that than this speech displayed. So maybe wouldn't have got quite into that highest mark category, but it was quite good. In terms of correctness, did she trip over her words? Did she get incorrect grammar? Was there anything wrong in her use of the language at all? No. No, I didn't spot anything. If you did, then take a mark off. But as far as I could tell, it was actually flawless, which is impressive, because not tripping over your words once during a speech is pretty difficult. Okay, so look, I'll stop sharing. And that's been a bit of a brain dump from me and those who participated. Everyone will come away with something different when judging a speech, but you do want to be using those criteria and trying to do justice to the speakers by applying the same criteria to every speaker and thinking in the same way about each of the speakers. And if you're harsh on someone, you've got to be harsh on everyone. At these levels, harsh on everyone, otherwise everyone just gets full marks, because you get a very good set of speeches. Okay, my time is up. I better hand back over to our Toastmaster.
Well done, Nick.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you very much. You're still a champion. You've reached the district level and you know what it's all about. So you certainly have that wonderful insight as well. And also Annie originated from Adelaide Toastmasters Club. So we lent her to you guys over in Victoria, and she's been amazing, and we love it when she comes back and visits us. Yeah. So I would like to hand over quickly to Graham, and then say that you are welcome to stay on and do the rulebook quiz with Kevin, because we missed his session a little bit earlier on, and we would love for you to stay on and do the rulebook quiz. But I'll quickly hand to Graham in regard to the feedback.
Thank you very much, Sue, and thank you all for coming tonight. It's heartening to see so many people come along. I know we had some great conversations at 6 when we opened it up for some general questions. There was really good questions, great participation. We have a feedback form for you. What did you think of our training session tonight? That link is in the chat right now. So if you could hit that link, let us know what you think of the training. Let us know how we could do it better. Let us know what you would like to see in these future training sessions. That would be great.
Graham, it's not accepting responses. The
It's
feedback
not
form is
accepting
working.
responses.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, that's excellent. What have I done wrong?
So whilst Graham fixes that, my session was going to be to run through the rule book and the rule book changes. Now, those resources that were shared earlier contain TI's breakdown of all of the changes on the recent rule book. So rather than me regurgitate those changes, if you have a look, it's 637 -speech contest rulebook explanation of changes. It's the most invaluable guide to help us be able to recognize the changes from the previous 2 years in reality to this handbook. And if you're interested in giving it a go, then the link is now in the chat window. You'll be invited just to put in a nickname. It doesn't have to be your real name. It can be anything, but you will be ranked against each other based on how quickly you manage to answer the questions that will all be based on the rule book and potentially recent changes. I see that Sue's joined. What I might do for the purposes of this is share my screen as well so that you can see what I'm seeing. Not sure who hisses.
I'm in real trouble now.
Okay, I think that feedback form is working now. Sorry about that, folks. It should be working when you can get to it. I'll repost the link, but let's look at the quiz.
So I can see that we've got 16 people online and 8 have joined.
Thanks, Quan.
Up to 9.
I haven't read the changes, but anyway, maybe that will, if I get 0 out of 8 or however many, then I'll know I've really got to up my game. Hey.
So this quiz was recently done at one of my Region 12 catch-ups, and the highest score was 11 points out of 14. So if you can beat 11, then you're beating the region advisors and district.
There you go.
Was that a wave goodbye, Greer? Yep, it was. Doesn't want to be challenged out. All right, so we got 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think that means that we're a go. Right, everybody who's here has signed in. So I'm going to give a small amount of time. There will be, as I said, you get awarded points based on how quickly you get to answer. Feel free to challenge as we run through it, and the answers will be revealed as we go.
What happens if you have a conditional answer? Because I actually...
No such thing here.
Nope.
Well, there is one potential.
Nope.
Can I ask a question?
How do you answer? I'm trying to press a button on the one that I think is right.
Press the button, then you say send.
Can I ask a question? Because the third point is quite ambiguous. It says the members club has only 7 renewed members. Does that include that person or doesn't include that person? It's very ambiguous.
It's already recognized that the person is eligible, as in they're a member of a club. So I would suggest that that is inferring that they are part of those renewed members.
So that means eight members in that club. For
No,
that point.
they are one of the 7. The club only has 7 renewed members.
So I can't see where I send this. I'm clicking on my answer and nothing's happening.
Can you scroll down the screen a little bit?
I'll take my screen up a bit. No, I can't take it up any further. No, it doesn't have a send or anything on my screen.
Right down the bottom, Nola.
Is it?
Yeah.
Maybe I've got to push this up.
Nola, mine's the same. So I've actually just scanned in the code and I'm doing it on the phone.
Oh, well, I can't scan in the card. No, I can't do that.
Right,
So I'm not going to be able to do this, but anyway.
Can you scroll within the window,
Scroll down
Nola?
any further. I can't.
Within the window, Nola, can you scroll within the window? Where the questions are,
Yep, no,
scroll in that.
no, I can't.
There's a bar on the right-hand side that goes up and down.
Yeah, I know that. Mm-hmm.
Can you see that?
No, I haven't got a bar. Why would that be? I don't know. Sorry.
You're too young to go to bars, Nola. Too young.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Hover the mouse over the bar.
no.
Or maybe you just do yours out loud then, Nola, and we'll move on.
Yep.
All right. Mine's none of the above.
Right, I'm changing mine now.
So those were the results.
But what was the answer?
It'll come up eventually.
Oh, eventually, righto.
None of the above.
Yay! I've got 1. No prizes for getting 1.
I got first. Woohoo.
So Sue was the quickest to answer. So
Oh,
as you can see, the answers themselves
Someone's
will
screaming.
determine the ranking based on the overall winners.
oh, you're fair dinkum, aren't you? Right, here we go.
And this is specifically a new ruling.
Right.
And it is possible to click more than one.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yep. Before you submit. So all of these are click all that apply.
Oh, I don't know the wording.
The wording is thank you, Kevin.
No. It's whether the on the 4:30.
4:30:01.
Must be. Yeah, well, that's that. You don't count part seconds. But is it must speak
Yeah,
at least for 4:30? That means that 4:30:01 is okay. But you disqualified at 4:30. I don't know. I don't know the wording. That's
So
a tough one.
the seconds do count if the decimals are on a timer. That's the issue with the understanding. So we're good to see the results.
You can't have nine. You can have seconds. They're all seconds.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Ooh, Sue's still in the lead. One catching up
Big screenshot that.
quickly before he takes over.
I'm just trying to think. I can't remember the time on evaluations.
This is where when we were doing it as a region in the regional offices, this is where Michael would constantly repeat, well, you just need to read the rule book again and read it again and read it again. Got one more person to vote. There we go.
But I only read reading, not writing.
That's how people voted. Yep, we're all happy with that.
Yep.
Oh, 3 out of 3.
Yeah, but look how long they're taking to decide.
Sorry, I must be missing something. Where do we know the answer? What was the answer to that one?
The ones that were highlighted in green.
Oh, so the green is the answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
Sorry.
This could have changed, but I don't know.
I could have beaten you on this, Sue. That's what I think. That's how I'm kidding myself.
I think you would have. I think you would have.
Thank you
Nola.
very much, Michael.
I'm answering for you. Okay.
Well then, Nola, where would your answer be?
Third, second, then first.
Very good. Yep, so we can see the green at the bottom there, Loretta.
I've dropped off the tree.
Sorry, yeah, no, I can see
Well
it.
done, Quan.
I just look at my time though. Look at my time. I'm doing it fast.
Yeah, fast and inaccurate better than slow and accurate.
I've always been fast.
Depends on the profession, I guess.
So what contest?
What trophies do you give?
Any
Wait. Well, it depends whether you had first, second, or third. Trophies. I'm just a.
Is it club or area or division or?
Doesn't matter.
You made a decision. Would you put down my time, please?
It doesn't matter which level it is. Because ultimately the decision is a budgetary one.